Last month, I went to the Museum of Freemasonry in London. I'd booked access to the Golden Dawn archive, original documents held under glass that most people in the Western esoteric tradition have never seen. I was looking for something specific, primary source evidence for a debate that has been building for years, an argument that the entire foundation of Western esoteric Kabbalah, the system used by virtually every tarot deck, every Hermetic school, every occult author since 1888, contains a fundamental error. I found what I was looking for, and then some. This document, held at the Museum of Freemasonry in London, it's a letter written in Paris, April 2nd, 1900. In this letter, Mathers writes, "Do you imagine that where such men as Court de Gebelin, Attia, Christian, and Levi failed in their endeavor to discover the tarot attributions, that I would be able, of my own power and intelligence alone, to lift the veil which had baffled them?" So MacGregor Mathers, founder of the Golden Dawn, in his own handwriting, explicitly names Court de Gebelin, Levi, and others as having failed to discover the true tarot attributions, and then claiming his own system came not from the Sefer Yetzirah, the foundational text of Kabbalah, but from secret chiefs, supernatural beings. This one letter dismantles 125 years of claimed authority because it means Mathers himself, as well as the Golden Dawn, publicly presented their system as being based on ancient Kabbalistic wisdom, while privately admitting otherwise. It means every practitioner since 1888 who cited ancient authority through the Golden Dawn has been misled. Welcome to the Hidden Realm, where we explore the supernatural world of sacred texts. I'm Frater Lucas. Today, we are going to follow the evidence showing what Western esotericism has lost and how to get it back. And I brought receipts, y'all. Before I show you more of what I found in the archive, you need to understand the chain of transmission that led us here, because this isn't one person making one mistake. This is a cascade, each generation inheriting the error of the last and presenting it as received wisdom. It starts in 1781 with Antoine Court de Gebelin, a French Protestant pastor who published an 8-volume encyclopedia called Le Monde Primitif, or The Primeval World. Volume 8 contains an essay on the tarot in which de Gebelin makes a spectacular claim. The tarot cards are the lost book of Thoth, ancient Egyptian wisdom preserved by priests and smuggled into Europe disguised as a card game. How did he know this? He didn't. He made it up. We now know there is zero historical evidence connecting tarot to Egypt. Tarot cards appear in the 15th century northern Italy as a trick-taking game called tarocchi. But it's 1781. Egyptomania is sweeping Europe. Napoleon is about to invade Egypt. Everything about Egypt is new and mysterious to French society, and of course, completely misunderstood. And so the fantasy stuck. In 1856, Eliphas Levi locks it in. 75 years later, Levi picks up de Gebelin's Egyptian fantasy and does something that will echo through the entirety of Western esoteric tradition. In his own essays, Levi, much like his predecessor, lays out his intentions. In Dogma and Rituals of Magic, published in 1856, Levi connects tarot to Kabbalah, not because he found historical evidence, because Levi didn't speak or read Hebrew. He was a dropout of seminary school, and not because he consulted the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the foundational text of Kabbalah, but because it seemed to fit. Again, another fellow enthralled by something that was mysterious to him and then misattributed. He takes the 22 tarot trumps and matches them to the 22 Hebrew letters, sequentially. This is the original sin, because the Sefer Yetzirah, written somewhere between the 2nd and 6th century Common Era, explicitly assigns the Hebrew letters according to a completely different logic. 3 mother letters mapped to the 3 elements, air, water, and fire. 7 double letters mapped to the 7 classical planets in the Chaldean order. 12 simple letters mapped to the 12 signs of the zodiac. The pathways on the tree of life are determined by these attributions, not by counting 1 to 22. Levi never consulted the Cypher Yetzirah. He lined them up sequentially and locked the entire esoteric tradition into the wrong configuration. De Gebelin gave tarot a fake Egyptian origin, which many, including Aleister Crowley, reclaim over and over throughout the years. Levi gave tarot a misaligned Kabbalistic structure. In 1888, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is founded in London, and MacGregor Mathers and William Westcott are working from what they present as an ancient Cypher Manuscript, documents they claim encode a received esoteric tradition. But there's a problem. They know the Cypher Yetzirah assigns the planets differently from what Levi's sequential numbering produces. So the Golden Dawn faces a choice. Admit Levi was wrong and use the actual Cypher Yetzirah, or keep Levi's numbered system and reassign all 7 planets to make it fit. They chose option 2. They reassigned all 7 double-letter planets. Not 1, not 2, all 7. Not a single double letter kept its original Cypher Yetzirah attribution, and they justified this by claiming that the Cypher Yetzirah, in their words, was most blinded on the planetary question, meaning the ancient rabbis had deliberately obscured the true system from the non-initiated. The deliberately concealed from outsiders narrative is a recurring immunization strategy across the Western esoteric tradition. It preempts source criticism by making absence of textual evidence into proof of the conspiracy. And we see this particular narrative repeated over and over again, particularly with Paul Foster Case and Dion Fortune, who presented the Golden Dawn corpus as authoritative, and of course, Crowley. He went even a step further, saying the Golden Dawn included blinds as well. Translation: the Jewish source text is wrong, but the Victorians knew better. I want to be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying the Golden Dawn practitioners were malicious. I'm saying they were working within a tradition of accumulated error that nobody had traced back to its source. From 1888 forward, the contamination spreads through every major branch of the Western esoteric tradition. A.E. Waite, the Rider-Waite deck in 1909, the most influential tarot deck ever produced, completely embeds the Golden Dawn attributions. Crowley creates the Thoth deck in 1944, as unique as it is still built on the Golden Dawn foundations. Israel Regardie publishes the Golden Dawn Complete System in 1937, cementing it as the definitive reference. Paul Foster Case, Dion Fortune, even Robert Wang, whose work I personally adore. Every major 20th century esoteric author follows the same system. If you learn tarot from any book published after 1888, you almost certainly learned from this contaminated system, not because you did anything wrong, but because it was the only system available. But here's the thing. The Cypher Yetzirah still exists. We can still read it, and it still says what it has always said. Now, back to the Museum of Freemasonry, because what I found there goes deeper than the Mathers letter. The error was there from the beginning. The Golden Dawn's authority rested on those Cypher manuscripts I mentioned, documents Westcott presented as ancient encoded wisdom, the foundation of the entire Golden Dawn system. The Cypher script is a Renaissance substitution alphabet called the Trithemius cipher. But here's what's important. Within the cipher text, the planetary and elemental symbols are not enciphered. They appear as themselves, legible to anyone. And in the portfolio that I found, the attribution table, you can read the planetary assignments directly without decoding anything. Saturn on path 32, Mercury on path 12, Moon on path 13, Venus on path 14, and so on. That's the Golden Dawn sequence, already embedded in the Cypher manuscripts themselves, which means the error doesn't begin with Mathers interpreting the manuscripts. The error is in the manuscripts, and given that those manuscripts contain post-1856 framework, Levi's sequential system, The manuscripts themselves are downstream of Levi, not upstream of him. The ancient received wisdom framing collapses because the documents contain 19th century content. But here's the clincher. Westcott knew the provenance was questionable. In a letter written by Westcott himself that I read in the archives, Westcott writes to a colleague asking for independent authentication of the manuscripts relative to 1882, specifically asking whether they predate his first involvement with them. An innocent processor of genuinely ancient documents doesn't privately seek authentication of his own materials. The Mathers letter, because there's more in it than just one passage. In this letter, written during the 1900 crisis when the English membership of the Golden Dawn had elected a committee without his consent, Mathers is writing from Paris to defend his authority. He threatens magical retribution. He invokes secret chiefs. He dares the members to verify whether Sprengel, the German adept whose correspondence with Westcott supposedly authorized the entire Golden Dawn, ever actually existed at the address Westcott provided. And in another passage, one member of the inner circle writes that they don't even remember which German city Sprengel was supposed to have lived in, Ulm, Heidelberg, or Nuremberg. They're not sure. This is the inner circle writing about the foundational legitimacy claim of their entire tradition. From hearsay with uncertainty about basic facts. The institution built on fabricated ancient authority ended with a break-in and a constable called to the door. I'm not saying this to mock the tradition. I'm saying it because this is what letters written by the founding members of the Golden Dawn show. And if the institutional authority was fabricated, that matters enormously for the question of whether the technical content, including the planetary attributions, deserves the deference it has received all these years. So what does the Sefer Yetzirah actually say? Because this is what ultimately matters. It's important to understand that the Sefer Yetzirah itself has several iterations, or recensions. In 2004, Peter Heyman, senior lecturer of Hebrew Studies at the University of Edinburgh, published his critical edition of the Sefer Yetzirah. Heyman spent approximately 20 years on this edition, collating 19 manuscripts across 3 main recensions of the text. It is the most rigorous scholarly treatment of the Sefer Yetzirah in English. The Sefer Yetzirah assigns the 7 double letters to the 7 classical planets in the Chaldean order. The Chaldean order is the geocentric sequence as observed from Earth, from the slowest moving planets to the fastest: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. Mapped to the 7 double letters in sequence, the correct attributions are Beth to Saturn, Gimel to Jupiter, Daleth to Mars, Kaf to the Sun, Pe to Venus, Resh to Mercury, and Tav to the Moon. Compare this to the Golden Dawn attributions, which place Mercury on Beth, or Moon on Gimel, and so on through all 7. By the time the Golden Dawn got done, not one double letter kept its Sefer Yetzirah attribution. And crucially, the Sefer Yetzirah assigns each double letter a polarity pair, a binary of aligned and shadow expression: life and death on Beth, peace and evil for Gimel, wisdom and folly for Daleth. These polarities belong to the letter, not the planet. The planet determines what energy drives the path. The letter determines what is at stake on it. So when you put Saturn on the Beth path, the life-death polarity is driven by Saturn's energy, structure and endurance, institutional persistence. When you put Mercury there instead, as the Golden Dawn does, you've misaligned the energy with what's at stake. The system produces distorted results because the fundamental correspondence is wrong. 15 of the 22 paths are identical between the Sefer Yetzirah and the Golden Dawn system. The topology of the tree of life is not in dispute. The zodiacal 12 are not in dispute. Only the 7 planetary double-letter paths differ. The error is surgical, specific, and correctable. So what does the corrected system look like in practice? What actually changes? The tarot cards sit on different paths, and because the paths carry different polarity pairs and different planetary energies, the meaning of each card changes fundamentally. The best example to illustrate the impact the Golden Dawn has had on the entirety of what is now considered Hermetic Kabbalah is how the lessons of the middle pillar changes. If we use the attributions that most of Western esotericism uses, the message of the middle pillar is this. But if we use the assignments as described in the Cypher Manuscript, the lesson is much more coherent and quite beautiful. It basically says, looking within yourself creates the balance between the physical and the spiritual world, so that you can understand or may participate in God's grace. Take the High Priestess. In the Golden Dawn system, she sits on the Gimel path with the moon. In the corrected system, the High Priestess, or what I call the Threshold, sits on the Tav path with the moon. Different position on the tree, different Sephirot connection, different polarity, master and slavery instead of peace and evil. The card that governs Mercury in the corrected system, what I call the communicator, sits on the Resh path between Hod and Yesod, the faculty that translates between the formative world and the foundation. Get it right and you produce beauty. Get it wrong and you produce the illusionist, distortion instead of clarity. 245 years ago, a French pastor invented an Egyptian origin for a card game. 75 years later, an occultist used that card game to build a sequential Kabbalistic framework without consulting the source text. 32 years after that, a society claimed supernatural authority to reassign all 7 planets and presented it as ancient wisdom. And for 125 years since, practitioners, authors, and teachers have inherited that framework as if it were established fact, because nobody went back to the primary source with a critical addition and asked the question. I went back. I asked the question. And then I went to the archives and found Mathers himself telling you in 1900, in his own handwriting, that his system didn't come from the Cypher Manuscript, which he claims. The primary source evidence is now documented. The contamination chain is traceable. The correction is available. If this matters to you, if you've ever felt that something in the received system was slightly off but couldn't locate the problem, subscribe. Because I'm just getting started. The system was hidden, the receipts are in, and the work continues. I'm Frater Lucas, and this is The Hidden Realm.